I don't have a bow tie either.
I'm on had a patient one time that said it should be staying good, and he was a mental patient, and he was talking all kinds of crazy, but he said he kept running with Dad, what, lo and behold, he was Dad, you were the
Fourth.
second or third or something like that. It was
That you're the third committed suicide.
Okay.
So his dad was the one that did the Angus fire.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
so he must have been the fourth, maybe he stayed, you were the fourth or something? His guy.
So that might have been a correct answer.
Mhm.
Okay, it is 7:01. Lee, are we live? First of all, I want to apologize for the called meeting, but on Friday, we received some correspondence from DEQ, and Mike and I talked to the representative for just a few minutes, and then we had a chat with Marla, myself, Michael Holmes, and Emily
Bartlett. Barrett or Bartlett?
Bartlett, who was the consultant for the Johnson County water and sewer study. And from listening to them, and it may sound a little bit harsh to be designated as a distressed unit, but Marla's cover letter pretty much did a very good job on that. There is a huge amount of financial incentives they may help us with to overcome that designation. They could be funding part of our I&I work. They could be helping us with studies to become more efficient. We do know that our water and sewer rates are probably the third highest in Triangle J area, and basically because we're such a small provider, our administrative cost is higher. But through all that, they can help us with the study of providing utilities to Pine Level sewer, and Pine Level can hopefully provide us water. So there's some good things that come out of this. And then the second part of what we have in front of us is a resolution to transfer our ARP money to pay for payroll, and then we use our ARP money for our designated, we use our budget to pay for the projects that will pay for their ARP. There's a whole lot less paperwork. But with that, we need to go through the formal way that we do things. And Commissioner Martin, would you give our invocation?
Yeah. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for all that you've done, and knowing that you've done great and mighty things. Father, as we sit to dispatch the business of the town, we ask, Lord, that you help us to make right decisions, Lord, that will benefit our citizens, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Michael Holmes, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roderick left me a message a few minutes ago. There is a death in his wife's family, so they've headed to Wilson, so he will not be joining us. So is there a motion to adopt the agenda tonight?
There is.
There are several policies, look like policies, I don't know whether they're policy changes, conflict of interest, and non-discrimination policy that I have not even read.
That's on the consent agenda, and we can take it off the consent agenda.
Okay,
It's just adopting our agenda for tonight.
all right.
So there's been a motion, does not require a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? And so it's your recommendation, we take it off the consent agenda, so at least we can have a review.
Yes, it is.
Okay. They are in front of you, and Marla's well, Michael, if you want to, these are necessary for ARP related documents. So if you wanted to go over it in a nutshell.
The School of Government requires us to do this to receive the ARPA funds. So we are requesting the project ordinance to be amended to receive these funds. And I believe Marla broke down the pay from March to June, that she may have a little more insight on this. She's kind of had a little more hands on this with the finance part.
So I know it's a lot, but part of my new job is to figure out how the recipients of state ARPA money are going to report back to the state how they spent their money, what the procedures are going to be. And in that process, I came across a blog post that the UNC School of Government did that recommended using your ARPA funds to reimburse yourself for general fund salaries. And if you're interested in doing that, they listed out all these documents that you had to have in place, and they drafted them for you. And you literally had to type in your town's name and your highest administrative official and your highest elected official. And that's what those, the A through G are the policies and things that they said you had to have. So the internal control procedure is just saying that you're gonna follow your own rules, that you're gonna separate duties as much as you can, and make sure that you have your bonds are for your finance officer and your other employees that handle cash and assets are in place. And the non-discrimination policy says that if you're going to use the funds to go out to bid, you're not gonna discriminate. The record retention policy says that no matter what the state record retention policy you probably have adopted, which Princeton has, says you're gonna keep these ARPA records for 5 years. The separation of duties goes with the internal control procedures. It just lays out in the town of Princeton what position is responsible for what internal financial duty. Cost principles policy, eligible is related to contracting, which you're not planning to do. Conflict of interest is related to contracting, which you're not planning to do. And eligible use policy is acknowledging that you understand what the eligible uses for your money is, and one of those things is reimbursing yourself for payroll.
Conflict of interest
Yeah.
speaks for itself.
So and it's, like I said, it's related to contracting, so it says that you want, contract with someone who has a relationship with someone, just because they have a relationship with someone on the board, or someone on the board works there or owns the company. But again, that doesn't even apply to what your plans are. It's just all the recommended documents that they wanted you to have adopted because you have ARPA funds. And they may come into play with this if and when you get the state ARPA funds as well, and you already have them in place. And this is very similar to what we did with the COVID money we got from Johnston County. If you remember back in 2020, we got about $40,000, and we used it for public safety salaries. and, reported that for a couple months till the money ran out. And then that money was just in the general fund to be spent. We put in that wall, and we bought some gloves and a hand sanitizer station and some other things. But we didn't have to keep up with that and report those small things because we had used it for public safety salaries. Well, these ARPA funds we have now, the $445,000, you can reimburse yourself going back to March 3rd of 2021 for all general fund salaries. And then this money is in your general fund to be spent as you see fit. And the mayor had told Johnston County that we were gonna reserve that money for stormwater projects. And so it can just be in your reserves until you need it, and bring it out for stormwater projects. And then if you were able to complete all your stormwater projects without using all the money, then the money's just left to be in your fund balance to be spent on whatever the town needs.
And Mike and I have a meeting with Michael King and I, Shane.
MK.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a meeting with Rick Castor on the 7th to go over the community building request. It's not a dead issue, so but we want to take a letter with me that we are going to be using exactly what we did tonight, so he knows that our ARP money equivalent amount of that money will still be used for drainage.
And the urgency to get this done tonight is so that you can go back to March the 3rd, because if you wait until your next meeting, you have to start in the budget year you're in. But if you go ahead and move forward tonight, then at the end of April, when Michael reports to the federal government that all your money is spent, that's the last report you'll have to do. And you're not gonna be making reports on ARPA money till the year 2026, because your money will be gone.
You know, Elena Kagan with Triangle J, she's involved in a lot of projects, but one of her specialty is ARP and COVID-19 and other related federal money in those buckets. That was her recommendation.
And she and I had an extensive conversation about this, and she said if they don't do it before June 30th, then they only need to do salaries for the general fund from July 1 going forward, which would have been the same process. You just have to wait. You'd have to report 4 quarters that you spend a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, until it runs out. And then if we do it this way, he's all gone.
Are you ready to move forward on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Everybody else? Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
There is.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? Okay. And item number 5.
Item number 5 is your amended ARPA grant fund ordinance showing 4 separate projects broken down as described: administrative salaries from March to June of 21, public safety salaries from March to June of 21, public work salaries from March to June of 21, and then number 4 is public safety salaries from July 1 to June 30th of 22, because you ran out of money.
Okay, we're spending money we don't even have yet, right?
Half of it was received in July last year, and you're just allocating this money.
Okay.
You're saying that the money that came last year, you're using to reimburse yourself, so it'll be in the general fund. And when the money comes in, sometime in the next week or 2, you're gonna get the other half of the money. It'll just go into the general fund as miscellaneous revenue, because you're reimbursing yourself for the salaries that you paid in previous budget years.
Okay. Is there a motion to adopt item number 5, the grant project ordinance?
Let's just make sure, I think I understand everything you're saying. Basically, we're just doing on the budget sheet and in the books, we're just moving from one column to another. We're not really, the money that, the ARP money that sits in the bank now, it'll still be in the bank. It's just that we
You're gonna move from the project fund to the general fund.
General fund, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
And so, and then when the next money comes in, technically, it'll spend a moment
Mhm.
in the project fund, but
Mhm.
since you already have it allocated, it would then transfer to the general fund.
Mhm. Gotcha. And all this is just to make reporting easy and
Right.
spending it easy
So
and
there's,
everything.
so we'll fill out a set of documents based on these 4 projects.
Mhm.
Create a file, you have to hold on to it for 5 years. At the end of July, you put it all on a spreadsheet and report it to the federal government that this is how you spent your money and that you don't have any left, and then your reporting requirement is over.
Mhm. Got it.
And if you have to report it per water and sewer or drainage or whatever other qualifying funds, the paperwork is quite,
Much more expensive.
doesn't mean we're not gonna follow the paperwork trail correctly, but it's easier.
It's just much more streamlined.
Mhm.
And to get it all done, so we reported on April 30th that we received half the money and we hadn't spent any and we hadn't designated any to be spent. And so in July, we'll report that we received it all and designated it all to be spent and it's gone.
Any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt? Item number 5.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Okay. Mike Rose has made the motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? I'm moving fast, and if that's not in order, let me know. This is a called meeting.
And I'll let you know if you need to let it off the gas.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, and the next item is the adopt resolution requesting designation, and the designation is a distressed water and sewer system. And again, Michael Holmes and I were on, and Marla and Elizabeth were talking to the representative from DEQ, and as you see in the letter that we got, item number, on first page, item number 1 and 2, we have always done our audit on time. We always done our audit, and maybe not on the date it's supposed to be turned in, but we've always done an audit. And we've done our finances in good order, but item number 3 is that on a scale of 8 to 10, which calls for you to be a distressed community, we came in at 10. And why did we come in at 10? The paperwork, the assessment is in the back. Do we need to go item by item, or?
I've seen the letter, but I don't have a copy in front of me, but has everybody else seen the letter?
I emailed it,
Okay.
but
Okay.
I did not print it out
I
tonight.
mean, in essence, we've had a few fines. A lot of it dealing with I&I exposure for some heavy rains. Our system is small, so our rates are higher than surrounding areas. And while I don't think our debt service is out of line, there are systems that have less debt than we do. And everybody who runs for town board says our water rates are too high.
Mhm.
But you also, in part of that conversation, Michael, if I'm correct, they want us to do some studies to make sure that we are financially solvent. And in some municipalities, they're not charging enough rate to pay to pay the operating expenses. So there's some educational tools they're gonna provide us. But in essence, if you turn back to page 3,
We don't have that right, that's in the email.
They don't have it.
It's in the email.
Okay, all right.
okay, I'll just, page 3, item number 2, short-term and long-term plan for infrastructure repairs, maintenance, and management. We're going to have to bid July 22nd for our I&I project, but the financial package that USDA Rural Development put together dates back to 2018 for a project of around $1,157,000. Grant was the grant was $815,000, the loan was $310,000, and the town had to make a small contribution of $7,500. We anticipate we're 25% underfunded for that project. And so by being a party to this group, we feel like that funds would be available for that 25% match, or whatever the additional funds are.
Well, the thing we would do is cut those, whatever can't be paid for in the USDA project out, and then turn around and apply to, for ARPA funds to do the rest of it. And in the process, decide if the wastewater treatment pieces even need to be done right now, because of the plans, we have to do something with wastewater treatment plant. But the way the, Susan with DEQ described it, there's a refunding round in September for everybody for ARPA funds, and there's the bucket's like this big. And then there's a funding round for distressed communities for ARPA funds, and the bucket is this big. So our chances of getting funding are much greater out of this bucket than it is this bucket. And that would be the justification for going ahead and joining this program. It's a new program, so no one knows a lot about it. But Maysville works with another client that's in this program, and they received $5 million last year, and they're getting $10 million this year, which is $15 million is the maximum amount of ARPA funds you can get. And it's basically to fix the problems they have without putting additional burden on their customers to repay debt.
And one thing that she said they probably would not do is help us with the treatment plant. They do,
Probably would not do that.
probably would not. The funding would be to do a lot of rehab work and try to get probably the plant we've got now sustainable. That's what they're looking for, is to make sure a town system is sustainable and cost efficient.
And can
for the consumers.
take care of maintenance and upgrades as they're needed without dependent on grant funds, which, and that's what we've been doing for the last 20 years. Because it's taken us almost 15 years with this project bid right now to make improvements and repairs to the system that were recommended in a plan for 0 to 5 years. But we just did it as the town could afford it, without putting a heavy burden on the customers.
But there is a carrot to that, and I'm not, she said exactly what Michael said, but if it makes us more efficient to have an interlocal agreement with a neighboring town
And regionalize.
and
That's a
regionalize,
different story.
then they may help us with the sewer plant. But
Yeah, she didn't say it was out of the question, but,
It's got to make sense for us to regionalize for it to be an eligible
yeah, because what they'll look at then is Pine Level's issues. And then if, they're gonna have to look at it saying, well, if we help Pine Level, we've got to fix theirs and we got to fix Princeton's, could we just come right here and fix one for Princeton and it benefit both? So they're just looking at making a regional system to collect it all. She said there is funding out there that would probably help with that, but if we go up there and just say, we want a new treatment plant, she said it's gonna be a hard sell.
And there are some other things in there. They want you to do an asset inventory and a rate study. Because one of the things that town scored points on is this current system is depreciated 50%, which means that you have some stuff that's wearing out and it's gonna need some attention. And they provide money for that.
And a lot of training. There's a lot of training and stuff that they have to come along with this.
What is our loan balance on the current system? And would that be something we could ask for help on?
Probably not, because that's not one of the things you got a point on.
Okay.
The most points you got was a sewer moratorium. You got four of your 10 points for the sewer moratorium. But there were no points for the debt ratio,
Okay.
because it's fairly low.
So, this entire matter, them coming and doing the assessment, was that something that they do as their regular business, or was this something that
Something that they do. The program started a couple of years ago, and so they work with the local government commission and their office. So they look at your fines, they look at your moratoriums, they look at your financial health, and they score everybody.
But now what I'm asking is, did they do this as part of their, as what that they would normally do, or did the town ask them to?
What they normally do, we didn't have, the letter just came. No one talked to them about it, no one asked anything, it just came. So from the conversation we had, they went through this process with all the systems in the state and determined who scored above an 8 and sent them a letter. And so if you read in there, when you score above an 8 the first time, you have the chance to try to make self-correct or work with them to do enough to correct to get below an 8. But if you score above between 8 and 10 a second time, you have no choice, you're automatically put into the program.
And they did not have funding to assist you financially until the ARP money was available.
And I assume the infrastructure bill is gonna come along behind that too. And give
Okay.
them money.
And so, tonight that we need to decide whether or not we're going to admit that we are at this level, that we are distressed, and we basically have to go from there, because, and it sounds like that if we contest that we have to have some rational reason to be able to tell them why we do not agree. And so,
And having worked here for 24 years and having been dependent upon grants to take care of problems and maintenance, and we started off behind.
right.
And so we've slowly been turning it, but it's not turning fast. You don't have a good argument.
But I mean, and I'm kind of asking myself, who doesn't depend on grant money for sewer projects?
Your large county and municipal plants that are not eligible for USDA rural development, they have to float bonds through the regular market, and they would not typically be eligible for grants. Johnston County may be getting some grants, but their 52 million they're spending on their sewer plant is coming from tax dollars. For ours, this program gives us a bigger opportunity to have our system updated with no cost to us. And hopefully we don't have to accept the designation. We can just go on like we've been doing.
Yeah, we don't have to accept it, but if we don't accept it, we don't get the help that's about it. And if we rescore again and we score over an 8, they're gonna take us anyway. So it's a point now, do we want to just voluntarily say, hey, let's do this, and we get the ball rolling to help get money in here to fix the stuff? Or do we wait, and then in a year or two, they come back and reevaluate it, and they do it anyway?
Is there any disadvantage that you can think
That was
of?
my first question I asked.
The only disadvantage would be they're gonna require training of board members and staff, and so you might be a little irritated that you have to go to a training class, but
Mhm.
it's all designed so that everybody understands the proper way to set rates and operate a system and avoid and create, and in the rate study process, we've had people come in and do rate studies before, and they want to include depreciation in rate study. And so that just means you're collecting money for the amount your system is depreciating. So when it gets to a certain point, you have reserves on hand to do your projects to upfit, maintain, replace, upgrade, whatever is necessary. And that just would drive our rates too high. We've incorporated a little bit of it over the years, but not the full-blown cost of depreciation.
But that was one of the things I
But
did
that's
ask
why our operating margin, on our last audit was 0.01. And so that little bit, we spent more than we took in by 0.01. That's how close we're riding the line. And then we got a point for that because I'm sure they want your operating margin to be positive. I'm not sure how positive. Depreciation's 52%, you got a point for that. So next year, your depreciation is gonna go up even more, so I don't know if that's an additional point or where we go from 1 to 2. Got 4 points for the flow moratorium. Hopefully the I&I project would be complete before they score us again, but there's no guarantee, because once we get the project bid, we have to wait for materials to come in, and for the most part, there's a 6-month lead time on materials. So chances are you're still gonna have 4 there, and then you had 1 point for the size of your population, 1 point for the size of your drinking water population per mile and your sewer population per mile. I don't see how that's gonna change significantly. So I mean, you're still looking at least an 8 next year.
Mhm.
If you increased your rates to bring up your operating margin and got rid of that point, you got 1 point for affordability, so it's on the verge of not being very affordable. And so if you raise your rates to get your margin up, then you become even more unaffordable. So you might swap a point for a point
How long does the distress designation stick with you?
until you don't score 8 points.
Okay.
Hmm. And I somewhat wonder, whether or not some of the ruling, from the Supreme Court on the EPA, whether or not that will have any effect on this right here. But, so, the worst scenario that we could have is to get the designation and maybe we don't get the funds that we need, but they force us to raise rates to be able to pay for whatever we need to make the corrections.
Well, I think that would be the worst case scenario, but the way I understood Susan to say it is they want to use this vast amount of grant funding available now to help us bring our systems up to date, and at the same time learn how to set rates and make plans going in the future so that we're not dependent upon grant funds to be able to do things that should come from the proper management and rate structure of the system.
So is it just strictly educational, or is it like they can actually force rate changes and so forth?
I think it's recommendations, don't you? That's what I got, that they would do a rate study and, recommend what you should do.
But if the local government commission were to take us over like they did Pikeville, they will make the changes in rates.
And that's
what I
another thing
gathered
she
from
mentioned,
that.
that what happened in Pikeville and Eureka and was it Spring Hope?
Spring Lake.
Spring Lake, where they've taken over other systems, they saw a trend happening. And if you think back in the news, there's been discussion for a long time that there are more infrastructure needs nationwide than the systems who own the infrastructure can afford to do. So I see this program as the state's way of saying, before we get to the point that the LGC's got to come in and start running these utilities in towns, let's figure out how to make everybody successful and get them on the right path while we've got some extra money here to do it with. That's the gist I got out of it. And it's not a criticism about how things that have been done in the past. It's because we're not alone in the boat.
Yeah, and I'll give you another 2 examples. When we hook up a residential house, our capacity fee for sewer might be $5,000 and commercial might be $10,000. In Clayton, depending on the commercial property, it could be $20,000 to $50,000. You know what the county's charge is for capacity fees?
I don't, I can find out tomorrow, but I.
Right, it's not, but are we charging the right amount to hook up a new unit? I mean, Pine Level, I don't think charges as much as we do, but there again, that's a different situation altogether. So, and the second example is, Michael Keene went to the county and turned in our proposals for our share of the grants that they're going to be providing for water and sewer and infrastructure. And Butch Lauder suggested that we turn in more than the $500,000 because, and I don't know, Pine Level and Kenley and Princeton were the only ones that turned in proposals for the $6 million
As of Monday.
as of Monday. So we turned in $445,228 for the remainder of that Beaver Dam project that did not get funded. And we turned in $306,495 for water meter replacement. Basically electronic meters where you just mash a button and, but that's not it's gonna save quite a bit of labor. And that labor can be used somewhere else.
Well, more than labor, if you actually read the proposal, it's a customer service tool. Because instead of getting a reading once a month, you're getting multiple readings a day on your system. And if someone has a leak, you'll know within a few hours when that leak starts, because if you check your readings, it'll say, hey, this location's using more water than normal. And I want a system that has that, and my kids left a water hose running one night, and the next day at 10 o'clock in the morning, someone's calling, you used 1,000 gallons of water yesterday, do you know what's going on? I said, yes, I found a water hose running the first thing this morning while the kids were playing outside yesterday. But it's been turned off now, so that keeps your water bill for Johnston County down, it keeps your customer bill down. So there's a lot of other advantages other than you don't have to send a man or 2 out for a couple of days in traffic and in and out of the vehicle to read the meters.
But if both projects were not approved, and the second project would probably be a very good tool for this program because it will make you more efficient. So, I don't like the designation in talking to the DEQ personnel. They don't like the wording either, but
The legislation uses that term.
So, anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah, because that, like I was saying a while ago, that was one of the things I asked. With this designation, does it hurt our credibility? Does it prevent us from getting grants or loans anywhere? You know, somebody will look and say, well, hey, you know, you're failing at something. Why would we lend you money to? And they said it has no bearing on it. They said, if anything, it actually looks better because it looks that you are showing to try to improve what you have. So,
Now, one of the things I thought about, I thought about the financial aspects of it as far as borrowing. But one other thing I thought about was what have we led the citizens to believe all of these years? Have we led them to believe that we run our plant efficiently, and ensure that they know that that we do depend on grant money. In all our conversations, we've always said that, and we actually brag about the amount of grant money that we've got. At the end of the day, there's a saying that they say now that I don't like, but they often say that it is what it is. And so asking if we were going to go fact finding, we would have to say that yes, 100% that we mainly depend upon grants to be able to make major improvements. Because if we've said over and over that if we had to depend on the taxpayers, so that there'd be a lot of crime, and probably more than likely, none of us would probably be sitting here, because because the citizens would probably want to run us out of town because their bill would be so high.
Well, and we talked about proactively announcing that the town has volunteered to join this program, because it's an opportunity to get training we may not otherwise be exposed to, and that it's a way for the town to maximize its ability to receive grants to make repairs and to learn how to keep rates affordable. And she said all those things.
And if our timing was not so close on this project's going to have to bid on July 22nd, it could be that they would pay for the whole project but probability is not, because the timing is just not there. But when you're getting, we didn't have to borrow $310,000, that would be great, but the grant's $815, so it's not an unhappy journey.
yeah, because one thing she said, even if we apply now, we do this and apply, the funds would not be awarded till probably January.
We don't want to delay anything.
And yeah, and if we don't do it until then, it'll be the next fall before it's available again. So that's one reason we need to, I hate to say rush, we need to do something, because if we don't do it now, it's gonna be this time next year before it'll even be considered, and it'll be the fall before we get the money.
And at some point, this ARP money is not going to go.
Yeah, it'll run out eventually.
Yeah, that I can't, every time we talk about this money, that I remember what so many members of the Republican Party said that y'all are asking for all this money to bail states out for bad spending, and that this money It's certainly bailing somebody out. It's bailing the town out, I know that. With that, Mr. Mayor, unless there's further discussion, I believe I can offer you a motion.
Motion's been made. Any further discussion?
Do you want to know what motion is?
I'm certainly hoping it's the motion to adopt that.
Yeah, that I would make a motion that we do voluntarily submit that we want to go into designated status.
Distress designation.
Uh-huh.
Motion's been made. Is there any further discussion?
For the official language, yeah.
Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? Okay, next is approve and sign the original state treasurer's response to audit. That could have waited until our next meeting, but since we're meeting, in general, our audit was late because Marla and staff were out a lot during that period, and I'm not going to go into details, but Marla had some sickness in her family. And the audit came in February. Traditionally, it should be here in November or December. And there were two minor areas of the audit that we didn't totally comply with. And one is that Mr. George has given the town preferred stock for his beautification grants, and that is against North Carolina statute language, but that's the only way you're going to get a good return on that investment. And the second was that we had some funds from the Golden Leaf that did not come in timely, and that was not reported the way it needed to be reported, but it came in right after July 1st. I will say I talked to April and Michael, and you want to tell us what y'all are fixing to do in August?
The auditor wants to have a pre-audit meeting, and I think that is scheduled in August. And then we'll start preparing everything, and he'll set a date at that time to have everything. But we can put everything on a computer and send it to him. So it's a lot easier than it used to be. Scan and save it to his website.
And it should be 60 to 90 days. We could have our audit back in November or December timeframe.
And the reason they're having that pre-audit meeting in August instead of July is they want me to help them. But I moved my retirement date from June 1 to July 1 so I could help you with the budget. Because there's a rule that when you retire, you can't work for and volunteer, or volunteer for the agency you retire from for 30 days. And so I moved my retirement date to July 1 to get the budget done, but I can't help with the audit till August 1. Actually, July 31st, but.
If you could get up with Broderick tomorrow.
You see me a lot this month, but you're not gonna see me at all next month. Because I'd like to get my retirement.
I don't have any other business. Does anyone else have any other business?
You were talking about Mr. George's money for beautification. Have we used any of that recently? It seems like we haven't talked about that in a few years.
No, it hasn't been that long since we talked about it.
Well, the mayor's in charge of using that money, and the last flags we bought, banners downtown, the Welcome to Princeton banners, was that money. But I don't think we've done anything in a couple of, not since the pandemic.
Yeah, a couple of years.
I would like to have some planners downtown after our sidewalks and all the reconstruction finished, maybe put some trees and a large shrubbery for street decoration.
Well, one, you probably need to upgrade some stuff here at the town hall as well, because some of it's a little bit overgrown, it's not symmetrical like it used to be. Because Chad and I had talked about that at one point.
But I'm welcome any suggestions anybody has of anything that, it's too early to do streetscaping on Center Street, but obviously that would be a big beautification.
But you earn about $1,200 a year that you can spend.
I know they came down and kind of swept the streets after the paving project. There's still a lot of that gray sandy stuff, the screenings, I guess, around everywhere. And I know that's not part of that money, but I was just gonna mention, since we're all together, I was hoping we could get,
I think that is on the contractor's punch list
Okay.
to do before the end of the project.
okay, because I was hoping they would come back and clean that up, because it's still a lot in the gutters and everywhere.
And I made sure April sent me a spreadsheet that we have not spent all the money yet, so there is still money being held in reserve.
Okay. Yeah, do we know if the Jimco issue got resolved?
I do not know.
And I won't say anything else other than this, but there's another one, another issue that needs to be resolved too.
Okay. Well, yeah, I hope they got paid, because they had not gotten paid.
Yeah. If you want to reach out to Jimmy, but in theory, we're not, we pay the
Right.
GC and they're supposed to pay for subs.
Right. The only reason I had reached out about it, because the GC was saying that we were to hold up, so that's why I wanted to make sure that we were not to hold up, and it appears we were not. That's all I had to say about it. The sidewalk project that went on today at Casey's, was that,
That was
that was not town related, was it? I mean, that.
Yes.
that was a patch job.
That was
Repair.
a regular
Yeah.
sidewalk repair. Prior to the downtown project, a certain set number of feet of sidewalk was replaced every year.
Yeah,
And so it hadn't been done in a couple of years because we were gonna do the drainage project, we didn't know how it was gonna affect the sidewalk.
okay,
And so once it was clear that that sidewalk wasn't gonna be affected, and it was the worst section in downtown,
okay.
Chad chose that section to repair.
And this,
And or
Atlanta had
replace.
the hometown strong, Miss Casey had mentioned it to me about getting repaired, and I asked Chad, he said he already had it on his list.
Okay.
It looked like they replaced.
Yeah,
Right,
they cut it
it's
up.
gas, they cut it out. and
They poured it this
completely
morning and they had a
yeah.
funeral mile away ago, so
Yeah.
they were.
Oh,
Somebody put their initials in it.
Yeah.
But you do remember that
Right.
they would just choose like the worst
Mhm.
section and spend as much money as
Yep,
we could
yep.
afford out of
I
Powell
just
Bill
didn't
to.
realize that was a designated section, but yeah, that's good.
Okay, so there's a motion to adjourn.
There is.
All in favor, raise your right hand. We're adjourned.
Better turn it back up.
Just hit run schedule.
Somebody's got to pay the bill.
Hit run schedule.
Do what now?
Hit run schedule.
Oh, does.